wow, man, you really messed this up. Him taking those I love yous back.
Yeah.
Dear
Exactly.
Lord.
Hey, we're Julie and Kelly, and we're here to find love. We'll be recapping the finale of Clayton's Bachelor season. Okay, so we do have another recap that was about the rose ceremony specifically. It will come out after this episode. We have a lot of very controversial thoughts because we were talking about a totally different Clayton in that episode. Last night was just, I am still wrapping my mind around it. He just did a total 180 on us. I'm a little bit embarrassed about defending him as hard as we did, but I think this speaks back to the fact that he's a very human lead. So let's just go right back to the beginning. Let's start off with Susie. So Clayton told his parents that despite them meeting Gabby and Rachel, he still wanted to be with Susie. He was still thinking about Susie. He still wanted to pursue that connection. Jesse walks into the room, says that she's still in Iceland. Then he goes to the hotel room, meets up with Susie, and tells her that Clayton is still a wreck and that he wants to recontinue the conversation. The entire time, she looks terrified, at least in my opinion. She just kind of looks a little bit confused about what's happening. So, Kelly, what did you think about that conversation and just how Clayton was approaching, the one that got away?
Yeah, we had a lot of thoughts about the whole concept of this one that got away thing, which you'll see in our next conversation about that rose ceremony from hell. But what I'll say about this scene in particular is I do think that at that point, once Clayton realized that for him, it was Susie that he really wanted to pursue things with, I do think it made sense that he did just need to kind of like talk to her and close down his relationships with the other two women. Like this was the appropriate point for him to do this. So I think that this made sense for him to do. And, to the point that he had made in the last episode, I think he had said this to his parents that Susie had brought up her boundary, but it was Clayton who ultimately ended the relationship. And I think because of that, it did make sense for him to want to reopen the conversation and see if she still wanted to have the conversation, considering that she had still been trying to talk to him when he kicked her out into the limo. So I think it made sense for him to reach back out to her to see where she was at. And I really, really, really respect how Susie responded, which was, listen, I appreciate your apology. Here's how I felt in that moment. Here's why it was really terrible for me. I also still have something I'm feeling here. I can't give you a definitive answer, yes or no. I need to think about it some more. And, I'm hoping we could just talk about it again after I've processed. Wow, I really appreciated that because she didn't try to say yes. She didn't try to say no. She didn't get too caught in her feelings, but she was also candid that hey, I do kind of still feel something here. And I do kind of some part of me could be open to this, but I just don't know yet. And I appreciated that. I think that was a good, candid response to a very weird and shocking situation. And she also did it while still standing up for herself and her experience of what happened at their breakup. So overall, I thought that conversation was fine. I think the thing that it was just so shocking to see as a viewer after he had fought for Rachel and Gabby to stay. I think it was really shocking to see this happen. But ultimately, if you really try to put yourself in Clayton's shoes, I do think that this made sense for him to do. This was the appropriate next step for him. Was shocking.
Yeah, it was shocking. And we spoke about this also in the other recap, but I had my thoughts about what does it mean when you continue to reject someone's opinion about if a relationship should continue or not. I thought that him showing back up in Iceland was a little bit emotionally turbulent for Susie because she's still in her feelings. She set a boundary. It was very hard setting a boundary. It was very hard to communicate that him being intimate was a deal breaker for her, and then for him to treat her the way that he did, I can see why that's really intense for her to sort through. And then for him to come back and be like, I want to keep fighting for you, it just puts you back on that same hamster wheel, because then it is up to her to be like, how strong is his boundary to me? How much does this relate to my value system? And what does it mean if I keep telling him that it's wrong I don't feel comfortable continuing, and he keeps trying again and again. It's like he's not listening to me. That's not a romantic love story. A lot of people see that in romantic comedies, that men will just always, like, a no is really a yes. You just have to keep trying, and I think that's a very unhealthy interpretation to take on. That was a little bit of my concern, because I just felt like when she was talking to him, even when she, like, met his mom and his dad was just, like, sitting there, and she was like, hey, I want to talk to you privately first. How uncomfortable. The first time she sees him after this huge fight, his parents are sitting there after they just met two of his other, like,
so
people.
Shocking.
It's just so much. I was just
the whole
like,
thing
what?
Was so much.
My mouth was dropped the entire time. I know he's following his heart, but he is, like, he keeps thinking about his intent, and he's not really thinking about his impact. And it just really shows up in all of his interactions. He's just like, my intention is pure. It's like, totally. But there are ways to go about it where you just don't have to callously hurt people along the way. Like, you can really be thoughtful about the ways that you're managing these interactions. Because I just think, what a stab in the heart to, meet the parents for Gabby and Rachel, for them already to take him back. And then for him to be like, actually, it was Susie the entire time. And I just needed to see you with my parents to know that. It's like, what the hell is that? Like, that's such a confusing, weird position to put those two people in. And I know he needed to see that through so he could get to that conclusion that Susie was this person. But why couldn't he just be, I don't know, in his hotel room by himself? Why did he have to, like, string them through these experiences? See the alternative fully, exhaust it completely, knowing that their heart was on the line, and then be like, okay, now I can make a conclusion. Like, why can't you just journal?
It's tough, right? It's tough to say that, like, he should have just, like, made the decision by himself and then, like, without continuing forward, because he is in this process, right? In normal life, it wouldn't be like, we had this horrible fight and now you go meet my parents. That was not what it would be like. It would be like, we had this horrible fight and then, we made up, and then we'll, like, hang out the next day and just keep kind of, like, talking through it, get back into our rhythm, make sure we feel okay, and then maybe we'll move on if it's feeling right. It's just that in this ridiculous Bachelor process, the next step had to be, the next week had to involve meeting the parents. So I feel like that was less of, like, a Clayton thing as much as it is, like, he's constricted by the process. I don't think he would have chose to make those women meet his family at this juncture of their relationship right after this awful fight or this awful conflict. I don't think anyone would have chosen that. I don't think these girls would have chosen that. I don't think the family would have chosen that. This was just kind of like the show's format was was trying to force this unconventional love story into this, like, format that they've had for so long. And it's like, you're forcing these people into the situation that makes no sense for where their relationship is actually at. It makes no sense for them to go meet these parents, but they're just doing it because that's what the show says you're supposed to do. And I think that that was confusing, I think, for everyone involved, for the parents, for the girls, for Clayton. I think it was confusing. Now, all of that being said, I still don't think it was wrong for him to want to continue exploring his relationships with Gabby and Rachel, because I just don't think that he knew. He was trying to understand if he would get to the end of that week and feel that way. And then he got to the end of the week and he realized, actually, that's not how I feel. How I feel is that I am still thinking about Susie. And I don't think we can fault him for not knowing that earlier, because the truth is, you just need to spend time with people for you to really understand how you feel about them. Sitting in your room by yourself is not going to tell you how you feel about them. Like, you need to just, like, spend time with them to understand, like, do I actually want to spend my life with this person? Sitting in my room by myself, I'm not going to figure that out. And so, you might be able to process the information that you already have, but Clayton was seeking more information because, let's not forget, he's only known these women for, like, 2 months. He doesn't have that much information about them. And so I think him wanting to continue gaining more information about them, I think it's fine. It's just was so hurtful. The context really, really sucked. And I think ultimately the way he ended the relationships with those two women was brutal, awful, unacceptable. I think that the way that he broke up with them was just unacceptable. Why would he do it together? Why would he address them as a group? Why would he not just take each woman individually? Because each of these women are women that he in theory loves, or in theory his girlfriend, he's been dating them for 2 months. Why would you not individually go and have a conversation with them? To treat them like they're just like a group of students, like a classroom or something, as opposed to people that you formed a deep, loving relationship with, I think is unacceptable. And that to me was where this all fell apart. I think his decisions up until now, while painful for the people involved, I don't think that they were the wrong decisions necessarily, but I think that breakup, and I think maybe more importantly, him taking back his I love yous, that to me was like, wow, man, you really messed this up. Him taking those I love yous back. Yeah. Dear Lord.
I mean, that leads us into the next conversation, because after he spoke about the whole thing of Susie, and like, I hear everything that you're saying, and like with the rose ceremony yesterday, I was on his side. I thought that production was really amplifying his bad decision making. With that said, I don't think it was totally on production for him not to even have the social grace to pull them aside individually. And that's what I mean. Like, yeah, maybe he did need to see those connections through. He needed them to meet his parents. He needed to fight with them and have them stay in the relationship. But I just don't think he was being introspective enough. He was processing out loud. Like, he was extroverting all of his confusion towards these women. That's unfair. That's so unfair. Like, I'm thinking about real life dating. Let's say you're dating someone and they don't know if they want to be with you or not. Take some time and figure it out. You don't need to word vomit your confusion to the person that you're dating. That was where there's that little bit of specific nuance that Clayton was missing. Like, he was having all of this time to just really be, you know, like, he just wasn't in his room. He was talking to the girls about it. And then after he was like, okay, I have reached my conclusion, I take back the I love you, because I don't think that's possible anymore. Me fighting for you, that was... I should have never said that, because I really want to fight for Susie. Like, the way that he completely... It went very black and white. If he kept that conversation gray, I would have a little bit more grace of how he handled his decision making. But because he was like... Everything that I told you the night before, I was just so hurt, and I was just figuring out my things with Susie, and I'm so sorry, but I didn't mean it. What the hell? You can't just say that to two girls that have gone against everything that they're thinking of and their feelings for him. Like, he's exploiting it to be the main character in their love story. Like, Gabby wanted to walk away, and he was like, I'm gonna fight for you. And now Clayton... Like, she made a great point during their breakup. She was like, now it's your choice that you're breaking up with me, and I have no say. But when you were breaking up with me, you had a say in it. I wasn't correct in it. I think that is the problem. Clayton is so lacking this nuanced empathy for how he's treating this woman. And it makes it really indefensible, because I see how he's been really clumsily handling the conversations ever since he told them that he was intimate with both of them. Like, if he handled their breakup differently, I would have a lot more grace for him. But for him to be so clumsy yet again is like, I just can't. I really am just like so upset with how he sat them down as a group, like you said, addressed them, and was like, okay, well, you know, I'm so sorry about this. It's like, what are you doing? Why can't you just, like, even Peter broke up with his people individually. Pilot Pete did that.
So 2 things. I will say that this thing of, like, should he have been externalizing his processing or not? I think it's really hard to say that he should have just not told them at all how he was feeling or what he was thinking, because I do think that keeping them in the dark just means that he is cheapening both of the relationships further, because both of those people deserve to know the truth of what is happening in the relationships that they are in. Gabby deserves to know the truth of the relationship that she's in, and Rachel deserves to know the truth of the relationship that she is in. And if Clayton had just strung them along and made them think that everything was fine while he was secretly kind of trying to decide whether or not he was going to break up with them, I just don't think that would have been okay. I also don't think it would have been okay for him to, you know, take them to the rose ceremony, just like give them the flowers and move along while he was trying to like make sense of what he was thinking about with Susie. I think he had to tell them. There was no way for him to not tell them. It was the way that he told them that I think was a real issue, and doing it in this group situation. But I just don't think there was any way for him to not just be direct with them and say like, hey, I really fucking love you. I really want to take this next step with you, but I just don't know if we're going to be together. I just don't know if we're going to end up together. And I'm still trying to figure it out. I think there was nothing that he can do other than to say that to them directly. And it's not like he continued talking to them about that. Then they went to the parent state. They were moving on from that conversation. And it wasn't like he was continuing to be like, I don't know how I feel about you. I don't know how I feel about you. I don't know how I feel about you. They moved on from that conversation after that one night. So I do think that it was appropriate for him to tell them, like, hey, this is where I am, honestly, because I think I said this in our last video. This was one of the issues with Susie and the way Susie told her deal breaker to Clayton. It was like Clayton didn't even know that Susie was considering leaving him, or that Susie had one foot out the door. He had no idea up until the point of their fantasy suite date when she told him, like, hey, if you do this, I'm leaving. He had no idea that she was considering leaving. The whole time she was thinking about this by herself for a week without letting Clayton into her thought process, and I think that's why he was so blindsided. And so I do think that Clayton had to tell these women, like, the state of confusion that he was in. It's just about having, like you said, that social grace, or even just like it's like, I don't think that he was treating all of these women as though they were the same person, the way everyone has been kind of suggesting that he was doing. But I think he was forgetting that you have individual relationships with each of these people that you need to nurture and care for. And this is no longer the Bachelor and his group of women. You have individual relationships, and you need to care for each woman individually. That's point number one. Let me tell you point number.
I'm ready for it. Tell me.
Him taking back those I love yous, I think that was a cowardly move. Everyone after the final rose was seeming to suggest, including Clayton himself, that he didn't actually love those two other women. And I actually don't even think that's true. He walked back in there and he said, like, oh, I realized that I can't actually love 3 women at the same time. And it's like, Clayton, you cannot take back your feelings. Not only because it's just like completely devastatingly heartless to do so to these 2 women, but also because you felt it in those moments. So why are you invalidating your own feelings that you were experiencing? And so to me, this felt like it was kind of like, now that he knew it was Susie, he knew that Susie was the one that he wanted to pursue. It was kind of like he was like, okay, I'm going to just go and rebuild my monogamy fantasy around her and just pretend that I was monogamous to her the whole time. And it's like, you weren't. You had multiple loves, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with you being in love with 3 women. That is just how, that's just how you experience love, and it's okay that that's how you felt. It's okay that you wanted to be with Susie, but that didn't mean that you needed to turn around and pretend that you didn't feel what you felt for those other 2 women. To me, this felt like he was like kind of like altering reality for the sake of this like monogamous love story. It was like he was trying to rewrite what really happened to pretend like he never loved the other women. It was kind of like he was like, now that I know I love Susie, I need to like pretend that no other woman exists to me. And it's like, what? Like, you don't need to pretend that. And it was kind of like he, at the very end, just like drank the monogamy Kool-Aid down. It was sad to see, honestly, because he was breaking through so many walls throughout his journey. And then it felt like in the end, he kind of like regressed. He was kind of like, now that I know that I really want to pursue things with Susie, I need to like pretend that this was true for me the whole time. And it wasn't. It was clearly not true for him this whole time. He clearly said to Rachel or whatever in their fantasy suite that he'd never said I love you to someone in 6 years when he said it to her. He clearly felt it, and him taking that back, that was such a sharp withdrawal of care in the service of a fantasy with Susie that to me, it just represented the kind of tragedy of monogamy, and also honestly just like him being a coward. That's what that represented to me. I think he loved them at the end of the day. I think he did love those 2 women, but he was just too cowardly to admit it.
He loved them. And every point you're making, it's like, yes. Clayton was I'm just like, so I love the eloquence of how you just wrapped up the problem I have with Clayton and why it makes it hard for me to defend him now. Because before that whole conversation where he just became this monogamist, it's like he decided to have a totally different timeline. He was like, me being confusing, me being messy, me being human, I don't want that. I am completely going to be in love with one person. It will simplify my life. It will make things easier. This means I now have to detach my feelings, withdraw my care for Rachel and Gabby. That was jarring to see because that's not who Clayton is as a person. Clayton as a person is a very complex lead. Like, even him handling that group breakup, which is just, my God, it was so awful that it made Gabby and Rachel the bachelorettes. Like, that's how bad it was. Like, that the show decided to completely change their format to support these two women because they were getting... You don't really see breakups happen like that simultaneously, so candidly. So he was breaking through so many walls. He was breaking through the format of the show. He was completely changing this outdated traditionalist show that's steeped in this 90s fairy tale that no longer exists. And if he had kept doing that, if he just had the gumption to continue being like, I'm going to say everything of my chest. I did love them, just like other leads have said that to their top 2, top 3. I slept with them just like other leads have slept with all of their top 3. It's all he's doing is saying it out loud. It's like, if you really love someone, even during a breakup, treat them with the same love and care and grace at the beginning of the relationship as when you ended it. And we've spoken about this before. Like, Clayton, what are you doing?
It was like there was such a sharp withdrawal of care from Clayton toward those two women, which is what shocked both of them. Which, by the way, was also what shocked Clayton about when Susie was, trying to end things with him, right? That's like, so in their conversation, right? He was like, I don't even know who you are. Then he turned around and did the same thing to Rachel and Gabby. And I was really honestly, I was shocked to see it. I mean, there's just no reason to not be loving and attentive to, someone even as you're breaking up with them, right? There's just no reason to withdraw that care, because just let them go peacefully. Just give them the tenderness that they deserve and let them go in peace, rather than in this like state of coldness. Why do you have to be cold to someone to let them know that it's over? You don't.
I just shivered.
Be warm and so, even if also Susie is in the back of your head, you know that you love Susie and you don't want to upset Susie now as you're breaking up with these women, that it still doesn't mean you already said that you love these women. So it's over. The story that it's only been Susie is already over. So you can still be loving to these women as you let them know that there is someone else in your heart. And he chose not to do that. He chose to pretend that he didn't love these women the whole time. And that to me is the most frustrating thing about what was happening here. Even in the after the final rose, you could see Clayton kind of slipping. When Rachel brought up, when Rachel was saying, like, did you say I love you to me just to sleep with me? And he was like, no, I didn't. And she was like, okay, why did you say it? And he was like, because I felt it at the time. Like, clearly he knows that he loved Rachel. And he was like, he almost said it again. He was like, oh, because I loved you at the time. But he had to like catch himself. He's like, I can't say that. And it's like, why are you trying to rewrite your history? It's okay that you loved those two women. It is really okay. And you trying to rewrite this history is what hurt them as much as it has hurt them. It is why everyone is upset at you. And that's really the issue here. The issue is not that you fell in love 3 times. The issue is that you are trying to like pretend that it never happened. That's the problem. And
I think that's one thing that the show perpetuates, that love is a currency and that love is finite. It's a scarcity. It's something you have to fight for. You have to compete for it. And Clayton bucked against that narrative by saying, no, I have a big heart and I have enough for multiple people, different relationships. And then for him to narrow everything and go back to love being a currency, I can only say it if an engagement follows or if there's this committed relationship to it. That does not have to be the case. I think you said this an episode or 2 ago, that you can say I love you and it doesn't have to mean you want to be in a committed relationship with someone. It could just mean that's what you're truly feeling, and that is totally okay. The problem I have with Clayton is just like him taking it back, him being so progressive, being so complex, being so human, and then trying to clean up his mess and kind of stuffing
like
him back
retcon,
inside
yeah.
of the bachelor mode of like, can I just be like all of the other bachelors that have come before me? It's like, no, you broke rules for a good reason. And now that you're trying to put it all back in your Pandora's box, you are now hurting people because you said those things out loud. Like, please I just wish he had the courage to continue backing it up and to be like, I know it's complicated, I know it's messy, but that was my experience.
Right.
And I think Gabby
Right.
and Rachel,
Completely
because
agree.
they're both, dual leads for the next season, they will be confronted with this as well, and every other lead that comes from the show afterwards, because dating now is not what it was a decade ago. It's always going to be a messy season. It's always going to be people not really understanding if they want an engagement, how to choose between really compatible people, and Clayton is just really amplifying that. And I just hated that he had a fork in the road, and he could have kept going down this being a very multifaceted lead, and he just was like, now he's normal. He had a people shoot with Susie, and they're like now boyfriend and girlfriend, and everything is just very simple, and it just felt very, to me, like such a disservice to all of the amazing conversations that he was opening.
One conversation that at least will come out of this whole debacle, no matter how much Clayton tries to like put it all back in the Pandora's box, one conversation that has, or I think, come out of this is this idea of like, what does it mean to say that you love someone? What is the definition of love? Because it seemed like everyone had different ideas, right? Gabby, Rachel, Clayton, they all had ideas about what this meant. For Rachel, she was saying, like, I've never felt anything like this in my life. It was the specialness, it was the uniqueness to me that stuck out to me about this relationship, and my willingness to, like, fight for it no matter how hard, and, like, pushing myself harder than I ever thought that I could. That was what Rachel said about what her experience of love was with Clayton. Gabby talked about, like, no, if you love someone, you're taking responsibility for them, to care for them and to protect them, and you never did that, right? That's what Gabby said about her definition of love. And then with Clayton, I mean, it's hard to say, because Clayton kind of like,
we don't know,
we were moving toward this idea that like love is like this feeling that you could have for someone whether or not you decide that you want to be with them ultimately. And I thought there was something about that was really powerful, to recognize that you can love someone and still not think that they are right for you, which I think is just true. I think lots of people experience that feeling of like being in love, really, really loving someone, but realizing, oh, hey, just because I love you, it doesn't mean that we are right for each other, that we should be together forever. And like being able to have that conversation about that kind of love, I thought was really exciting and powerful. And Clayton kind of just like rewinded it. But I still think there is something to be said about the idea that, love can mean a lot of different things to different people. And we're seeing that. And it's like so important for people, and especially people in relationships, couples, to talk about what they mean when they say I love you. Like when you say those words, don't just make an assumption that I love you means the thing that you think it means.
When people view love, there's a template that follows it, and it's shaped by society. It's shaped by the messages we get from our parents. It's shaped from the dynamics that we saw growing up. And then when we meet someone, we automatically assume, it's kind of like a Susie thing. She exemplified this, that there's mind reading almost. Like Susie's background set her up to be a person that was like, I want to be chosen so much that I don't have to issue ultimatums, because the person will be so afraid of losing me that they will come to the decision to sacrifice and compromise certain things that I need my partner to want to do. That's a very encompassing type of romance that she was looking for, because his version almost was like, I want an engagement. I want a family when I say I love you. So I think that was what really muddied the waters for all of the women, because they knew that he was a person that walked into a season not with like this predetermined goal, but it was always in the back of his mind that he wanted to be a person that could really pursue things seriously with someone, right? And that was what I'm going to go back to when he like had the ring and he had Susie show up for the final rose. I was completely
shocked.
You brought this
up, because I have lots of ideas about this.
I can't wait to hear them. Because I thought that was, okay, first, they have the conversation. She says thank you, which I love. She goes back into the car. We don't see her again until Jesse shows up to her hotel room, hands her a handwritten note that Clayton gave her. And then she, I thought she was going to show up just wearing like Uggs and jeans, but she had on like a white dress. So she knew that it was the final rose. She knew that.
Yeah, she knew.
Assuming that she knew that the other girls were sent home and it was just her at the end. I had a problem with Clayton not continuing a low stakes conversation with her. For him to like be like, I still see you at the end of this. And I don't know if he was planning to propose to her or if that was in the back of his mind if she would take him back. I thought, wow, that is so much pressure, and his love with Susie at that time was completely incompatible because he was like, my idea of love is grand gestures. It's big moments, it's big moves, it's engagement, it's commitment, it's serious, it's you and me, everything else. If you don't want me to do something, I will absolutely take your lead on that, and I would do whatever you need to be comfortable. Obviously, we know that they get back together, and like after the show, they're able to reconstruct a language around love that they both are on the same page about. I think Susie really valued that he respected her the entire time and that he was waiting for her as well. I think that really is the quality in a man that she's looking for. I don't know what Clayton wants. I still don't really know what he wants, but I just felt uncomfortable seeing them on that couch. Like, maybe they did need time to figure things out, but I don't know. Like, I just have hesitations around, like, when you break up with someone, why wouldn't you let someone go? Like, is it disregarding someone's boundaries? Is it disrespectful to not listen to someone and what they choose for themselves? Maybe you're not happy about it, but that doesn't mean you don't have to convince them that the decision is wrong. So I don't know how I feel about the relationship still.
Yeah.
What did you think about it? I really want to know.
Well, so the proposal itself, I was really shocked too for the same reasons that you're saying. It's like, homegirl needs to ask some more questions before she gets engaged. Yeah. Like, you went from being broken up to she was like, I don't know how I feel because you treated me so poorly and I have to think about it, to like, will you marry me? That's like way too, it's like skipping all the in between. And frankly, at that point, Clayton hadn't had a real conversation with Susie in quite a while by that point. And it's like so much emotional stuff had happened by that point of their proposal, between when they broke up and they had like a normal date and conversation to when they proposed. So much had happened in between for both of them that it was like, to me, the fact that he was saying such big proclamations of love for her at that point, I was like, it sounds like you're proposing to like a fantasy of her, like a memory of her. You don't know what her emotional experience is right now. You don't know what she's thinking or feeling right now. You don't know anything about how, like, this girl has been transformed by this dramatic process, and you're getting to the end of it and proposing to her when you haven't even been with her for these last like week or two or whatever it might be. Like, to me, it felt like he was like proposing to like this ideal of like Susie, the girl who got away, I'm going to propose to her, as opposed to Susie, the real life woman who has needs and feelings and emotions. It felt, I don't know, it just felt like he was spouting nonsense. Like when he was like, I'm going to fight for you. I know you're the one, blah, blah, blah. Like, I was like, you were just saying words right now. You have no idea if your relationship will even work beyond, you just had this dramatic fight, you broke up, and you don't really know if you two are actually compatible. You haven't even talked about the content of why you broke up. You haven't even had a conversation about that deal breaker yet. You haven't, like, there's so much unknown information, especially by the time of that proposal, that to me, it felt like if I was Susie, I was so happy that she said no, because if I was Susie, I would be like, do you even know me? Like, or do you just want this happy ending with the girl who got away? Like, what are you, like, you're just saying words. You don't even know anything about how I feel. And so I honestly, him proposing to me would have told me that, like, I don't know that you actually love me for me as much as you love the idea of me. And I think it's almost what she said to him. So I was so happy to see that she said no, that she took time away from him and to, process essentially all the things that happened. And, I completely agree with you. I was uncomfortable when I saw them on the couch, that they had gotten back together. It was uncomfortable because it really did feel like almost like a twisted, like, nightmare ending of the story in some ways. Like, you know, I was just kind of like, oh my God, like, she, despite everything that happened, like, went back to him, like, and I hope she's okay. She seemed happy, and, like, you know, it's fine. And it seems like she reached out to him, so it wasn't like he was, like, continuing to pursue her and, like, badger her and question her decision. So at least, like, he gave her space and she was able to come to that decision herself. And, you know, this does happen. Couples will sometimes break up and then get back together and then stay together forever. Like, that does happen sometimes. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with the fact that that happened between them. It's just more like Clayton had displayed so much kind of confusion around who she was by the end of the story that I was just a little bit like, it felt like their relationship was, the foundation of it was like dreams. You know, it was like fantasies. It was like the relationship was the foundation of their relationship. But I think Susie did say this, that, you know, when she opened the conversation with him again after filming, they just like kind of took it conversation by conversation, day by day, to kind of rebuild their foundation, which to me sounds like, okay, maybe they're just dating normally now, and it's a little bit less about the drama and a lot more about, let's build like a true foundation of like knowing each other. And if that's true, then great, good for them. Like, I think that's the point to me. As long as they are actually getting to know each other and understanding each other now as they move forward, then I can see it working out. I can see it being fine.
Clayton and Susie on the show, maybe they were both feeding, it's confusing, right? And I think this is the first season that has shown that there is a persona that you do put on. Clayton, as a real life person, is a little bit confusing. He's a little bit indecisive. He doesn't really know what he wants. He has a very big heart. He's very suggestible.
Yeah.
That doesn't jive with the typical lead for a bachelor. The typical lead, they want someone that's very focused and decisive and smart and discerning about the choices they're making, because they feasibly know themselves so much, right, that they're able to make these decisions with clarity. And that's not really the case. I think if anyone is confronted with a lot of potentials for love, it would put anyone in a whirlwind. It's a very confusing place to be in. There's also the fantasy of Susie versus the reality of Susie. And I think maybe she was noticing that tension between, do I want to say yes to the proposal because I don't want to screw up the show? But then I have these feelings for Clayton still, but we're in this moment where they're asking me to make such a big decision that I can't say it with 100% clarity, right? And then maybe like after the show ended, that's when she was able to kind of she put away that version of herself that's in this super hyped up, super artificial environment, and was like, that is not me. The Clayton that I still think I love and recognize, the person that I saw outside of the format, I want to get to know him. I want to talk to him. I want to have a final conversation about everything. And then for him to, she said they spoke on the phone until like they couldn't, until like they fell asleep. And that was a very honest observation that she made about how many hours and how much time they put into all of these conversations to reconcile these two identities, and ultimately what love looks like for both of them, which you posed at the beginning of the at the beginning of this topic of your question of like, what is love to people? Like, they had to collaborate on that definition together, because the definition of the show didn't match up with who they are in reality. That's why they're not engaged. Like, that's why he's just moving to Virginia and taking things very slowly, because that is what the pace that's comfortable for the both of them. And the show didn't give them the opportunity to explore those formats. And Clayton, I think that would have been more amazing if we just saw him continue to break the show apart by being like, I'm not going to ask for a proposal. I just want to have a conversation with Susie, instead of doing what you want me to do, which is bringing her to this rose ceremony and having this lofty question asked of her, and then her not knowing how to respond back to that. Because is it Susie on The Bachelor responding, or is it what Susie truly wants to do in reality? Like, there is this dissonance between these two different realities that they're occupying.
So they'll figure that out. Honestly, I feel a little bit kind of like done with the two of them and talking about the two of them, I want to move on and talk about Rachel and Gabby because OMG, we have our two bachelorettes and I'm so excited. I mean, I am so happy for the two of them. They were so freaking cute when they were announced as the bachelorettes. The way they were just like hugging and Rachel was like touching Gabby's hair. I was like, I kind of want, part of me was just like, can these two just get together? They were being so cute. It was like warming my heart. Yeah. I kind of was like, I don't know, I was kind of feeling something there, but you know, I guess whatever, we'll see.
That would be amazing. Can you imagine if they're like, we choose each other, forget these clowns.
OMG. It's kind of what in my heart I want to happen with Rachel and Gabby, but you know, whatever. I am also happy for them that they get bachelorette seasons. My only issue is that I don't know why they had to do it together. Like, I wish they could just get their own separate seasons. Like, making them do it together seems pretty harsh for
what they just went through. Especially
they just went through that.
Jesse kept saying again, he said it like 3 times, we don't know what we're doing, we're gonna figure it out together. That is a little bit alarming because it's like, do you have any care, any type of like nurturance to how you are formatting the show so that these two girls that have just been through a group breakup doesn't continue to experience like a group heartbreak at the end of it? That was a little bit alarming. And Jesse being the host, that kind of dampened my excitement because why not Tayshia and Caitlin as bachelorettes? Like, and it made me think Clayton didn't have, you know how the beginning of the season starts and they do like the hometown B-roll and then they meet the other leads and they all talk about advice. Clayton didn't have that. He just went right into his season. Like, if he had some sense of like, you know, the people rallying around him, or like maybe Pilot Pete could have flown in and talked to Clayton about like his, you know, like, bro, I've been there, don't do it. Like, different. So like for Jesse to be there, I'm a little bit alarmed because I'm like, okay, can he really help these two girls figure out all of this stuff? I don't know, but I'm so excited for it. We're gonna be covering it, obviously.
Oh my god, I'm so excited
thrilled for this season. It's gonna be so good.
I mean, I love the two of them. Like, I really fell in love with the two of them pretty hard, like, at the end here. Like, both Gabby and Rachel. I mean, you and I have been fans of Gabby forever. I had been a little iffy on Rachel for a while, but I totally fell in love with her. Oh my god. I, like, think she's just so freaking cute and sweet and genuine and, like, just 100%. Such a big heart, and I just want her to be loved fully. That's all I want. Okay, so that wraps up our Bachelor recap for this episode, but also for Clayton's season. Tell us what you all think. I'd love to hear, like, what did you think about the way this season ended? What did you think about Clayton's decisions? What do you think about the fact that Clayton and Susie got back together? We want to hear, because we were definitely so just like mind blown, flabbergasted watching the episode last night. I'm sure a lot of people were too. So tell us your thoughts. Give us your analysis of what you think happened here. And let's keep this conversation going in the comments. We also will have one more video coming out where we are going to analyze the rose ceremony from hell, because we do think there are still some relationship themes that we should analyze from that episode. Kind of regardless of how the season ended, there is a lot of stuff to talk about a lot of the themes about, you know, love, and can love be measured, and yada, yada, yada. Can you love 3 people at once? Like, there's a lot to talk about there. So we are going to dig into that. So we have one more video coming out about Clayton's season, which will come out in the next couple days. So make sure you are subscribed to our channel, hit that little bell for notifications so that you are able to see that when it comes out, and follow us when we cover The Bachelorette in May or July or whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And since we have such a long break between now and the start of the next Bachelorette season, let us know, are there any other dating shows that you think we should watch, reality TV shows related to love and relationships that you want us to cover, do some recaps of, do some analysis of? We're happy to do it. I mean, we watch a lot of this kind of TV, but we're curious to know what you are interested in and what do you want to hear our opinions about, because we're down to do it.
We have opinions. We have
so many opinions. We have lots of ideas. If you want to hear them, let us know. And that's all for now.